This is Johnny Worthen, and I am here with you today to spend 50 minutes of our time talking about writing to theme. This is a class I've been giving for years, and it's one that basically defines my writing style, and hopefully you'll find it useful. I'm recording this in my luxurious study with my poster of Eleanor because that was the easiest one to grab because it needed to have something in the background. I'm Joe Worthen, tie-dye, we'll talk about that. We're in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that's why I'm recording this today, instead of being in front of you, sharing germs and bacteria, or I guess viruses as we might have, which was usually the way we do these things, but now we're gonna do it this way. So bear with me, we could have some technical difficulties. We could have a lot of fun. Anyway, so stay tuned, and we'll go through my little talk on writing to theme. So with that in mind, let's try Johnny's technical ability to share his screen. Oh, by the way, forgive the haircut. I know I have hair, I didn't cut it. You don't even know that. Anyway, happy 2020, everyone. All right, so, all right. Okay, everyone. So today we're going to be talking about writing to theme. If I can get all the rest of this working, I'll be happy. I can, I am. All right. Writing to theme by Johnny Worthen. That is me. Johnny@johnnyworthen.com. That is my email. You may email me any questions you have. I like getting emails. I'm a lonely man. I sit in dark rooms talking to invisible friends. That's what writers do. That's my website. I'll be pitching towards you. I'll be encouraging you to visit that a little later with some force. But in the meantime, just there it is. That's where we are. But okay, so writing to theme. Who am I? Why do I get to teach this class? Why you, Johnny? I know you're a handsome man with bad hair day, with round glasses and an awesome study. But why you? Well, it's a good question. So who the hell am I? I'm Johnny Worthen. Who is Johnny Worthen? Now it gets complicated. Well, let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Johnny Worthen. I'm a Utah Writer of the Year. I'm very proud of that. I'm a best-selling author. Now, best-selling, there's different degrees of best-selling. I'm not New York Times yet, but I have had a couple of books at the bestsellers list on Amazon a couple of times. So that's pretty cool. Eleanor's Celeste, David, those have all done very well. My bestseller is Eleanor. So I call myself a best-selling author because you take what you can get in this business, right? All right, so that being said, I'm also an acquisitions editor for Omnium Gather Media, which is a small dark fiction press out of California, which means I'm an editor, which means I have a slush pile. Not only do I send things to editors and get into their slush pile, but I have one of my own, and I get to send those wonderful letters. We love your book. Let's publish it. And sorry, it's not for us. I got to do that. So on both sides of that noise. I'm an associate instructor at the University of Utah, where I teach creative writing and writing mysteries and writing in general for the continuing education program. Since these are all currently online, you are welcome, my Colorado friends, to come join me there and join my classes. So that'd be cool. I'm a multiple genre hybrid author. I like to say that because it kind of goes to what we're talking about here. First of all, the multiple genre is more important than the hybrid thing. The hybrid thing is fallout from one of my publishers going under and selling all their titles to another publisher who said they would take my books, but they wouldn't take any more of them. So I took the Finger Trap back, and then I've been publishing that myself. That's why I'm hybrid with Dandelion Press. Finger Trap won the Diamond Quill for the Utah Book of the Year it was replaced, the year it was released. And so I didn't want it to die. Plus I had several others. And you can see Thicker Than Water came out last year. And this year, probably by the time you're watching this, I will have a fourth book. I have one novella, but I'll have a book called In the Wake of Captain Lord, which I'm not going to show you the cover for because I haven't let everyone else see it yet. Anyway, it's great. Long story short. But I'm also multiple genre. Like I said, my bestseller is young adult character study, Supernatural. I debuted in horror, if you will. Beatricil is a horror. What a Mortal Hand, my favorite book, from other reasons. Well, they're all my favorites. How can you see it? It's a great book. What a Mortal Hand is also a horror. Finger Trap and Thicker Than Water is a comedy mystery. The Brand Demand is just a straight mystery, a political mystery. I've got short stories. So anyway, multiple genres, which is difficult when you're trying to, because most agents and editors and publicists will want to pigeonhole you. And eventually, I'm sure I will be. Eventually, I'm sure someone will pay me enough to just write in one genre. But in the meantime, I'm writing what I feel like, and that's important. My motto is I write what I like to read. That guarantees me at least one fan. but it also very much speaks to what this class is about, what this presentation is about, which is writing to theme. I don't necessarily go out to write a genre. I go out to write an idea, and the genre just forms around it. We'll get into that. I'm the president of the League of Utah Writers as of this moment. In September, I will no longer be. I will be a past president of the League of Utah Writers, a great Utah writing organization, which has their own conference called Quills and Spring Conference, which are also very cool. Visit those. Anyway, I have a bachelor's in English with a classics minor. Yes, I speak Latin. You could tell that I did not have any idea about earning a living when I got out of college, because I have an English bachelor's and a minor in Latin classics. And I have a master's degree in American Studies, which is more of the same, just with a higher focus and reading a lot more interesting things and watching movies. It's film emphasis. But I want to point this out, because I did not come into writing from a creative writing program. That's an MA, not an MFA. I did not do a creative writing program. I did a criticism program. Now, if you don't know anything about criticism, oh, good for you. You're the luckiest writer in the world. But no, but criticism, as I mean it, is the ability to look at a book and discuss its deeper meanings, i.e. its theme. So I was doing autopsies on books before I felt I could even write a short story. So I always approach my work from the inside out, if you will. And that is why I believe I'm a multiple genre author. And it's why this class is so meaningful to me. I've written 20 novels, half of which have seen paper. Professional editor. I have a major series coming out with Flame Tree in 2021 called the Coronam series. First book is of Kings, Queens, and Colonies. Look for that. It's going to rock the world. Heavy theme. Anyway, my books are on the right, and Thicker Than Water is just out, which is a fantastic book. If you like funny mysteries, if you have a sense of humor and you're grown up, I recommend this book. If you're a jerk, stay away. And if you like these books, review them and tell me all about it. And if you don't like them, keep it to yourself. All right, so what is theme? All right, what is theme, right? Theme is what a critic like me tries to tell a writer their work is about, right? Like they know, right? What a bunch of shit is that? Like, have you seen this? This shows up about every 20 minutes on Reddit if you are stuck in that loop like I am. And we have here a Venn diagram named after, of course, Dr. Diagram, who invented it. We have what the author meant in the blue circle, and we have what your English teacher thinks the author meant in the green circle. And there's a little bit where they touch. You see, for instance, the curtains were blue. That's what it says. What your teacher thinks, the curtains represent his immense depression and his lack of will to carry on. What the author meant, the curtains were beeping blue. That's all the author meant, right? So what a bunch of hooey. No. Just no. Hell no. That is the most ignorant. This is the most ignorant thing I've ever seen on the internet. And you know the internet's full of ignorant things. Well, in recent times, there's been a lot of contenders. We'll have to hold that back anyway. But I want you to remember that reading, if you've never studied advanced literary theory, deconstruction, the works of Derrida, Barthes, well, you should. It's not important. What really is important is you remember, though, is that communication, and particularly reading, is a two-way street. It is not only the writer has control over the meaning. They don't. Once the book's out in the world, it's out of their control. Further, intent has very little to do with what is actually received. If any of you've getting in a fight, like an argument over text or email, you will notice that these can actually spiral out of control much faster than face-to-face discussions, where other forms of communication, body language, tone, can show up and help frame what you're trying to say. So that's an idea to keep in mind, that writing is the same way. So it's only out there. Okay, I'm getting a little bit crazy here. I'm going to pull back, but it's a shared line of communication. And that we all share certain symbols that really have no ultimate single definition. We can't go back to find out what tree means. We can only look at tree by what tree isn't and what other people think tree is. Anyway, long story short, it's a subconscious expression. Is that what the writer puts down is there, but what the reader takes out of it is also there, also has significant merit. I'll show you. So let us go for a moment and assume, as we do, because we are good writers, that there is an assumed covenant that we as writers and authors have with our reader. And the assumed covenant is, I promise, first of all, not to waste your time. This is the hardest thing we do. The other thing is we want to be interesting. We promise not to bore you. Well, screw that. We can do that if we want to, right? But the main thing that's there because is that we won't waste readers' time, and that everything in the book is there for a reason. Okay, it's those blue curtains, right? They just needed them to be blue. Why did he say they were blue? Well, he just wanted to give a little color, to get a little verisimilitude. You know, he could have said azure, he could have said periwinkle, he could have said cranberry and made us wonder what the hell that's about, cranberry blue, but he didn't. He said blue. So anyway, never mind. It's there for a reason. And every single bit, okay, now so the blue, the blue were there, the blue curtains were there specifically just to give us an idea of place. It has no foreshadowing. The author didn't think so. It has no emotional baggage. It's just there for that one reason. Well, that's fine. That was your intent. But if the reader, if the teacher can find that there is a connection between that symbol and this emotion, that is a viable reading. Because every single aspect of a book must speak to it. It's not a throwaway, wasted bit. So as we read a book, every single part of the book, its characters, its plot, its descriptions, its actions, its paragraph breaks, its commas, all form into a large, singular idea of what was there. And whereas one word like blue can very specifically refer to a setting, it also has its feet or its tentacles, shall we say, in theme. Everything in a book is part of the theme. It is all part. You see, instead of it's a soup, everything goes into the soup, and the final tasting and the final experience is the theme. It's what we get out of it at the end. So everything is theme eventually. This is what criticism does. It tries to take these pieces and breaks them up. This top silly diagram I invented, which is really strange. I've never seen it anywhere else, but it goes a long way. What I want you to think about here, and this is what's, we'll get to theme and how to write to it, but the writer comes with some idea and the reader comes with another idea, and they meet in the middle. Okay, so the reader brings most of the furniture to the house. I will describe, it's a big house with a green rug and one of those fluffy chairs you see at Kmart. Well, the reader must have some connection, and they will fill in the details toward that as they want to. They will do a lot of the work into that. Now, this is good because unlike, every single media has this happening, but reading and writing more than most have it, because basically all we're kind of doing is drawing an outline and the reader fills the rest of it in. In other words, the reader is engaged. The reader is part of the process. And we can describe something one way and the reader can sense it another, but the reader's right. The reader runs with that. So you can argue that, the curtains were, I never said curtains were blue. I said they were cranberry. You just made up blue. I don't know. Okay, that's a bad example, but your intent means nothing. There's a famous line that J.R. Tolkien, he wrote a couple of books back in the day, and everybody told him that his books were about World War I. And he said, hell no, I was writing, it started with a language class and I just got a mythology and that's it. He had, it had nothing to do with World War I, which his country, England, was still reeling from, millions of people dead. And they read that book with that zeitgeist, with that mind, and they could not see that. And I would argue that I don't care what J.R. Tolkien says, it's in there. There are echoes, there are comments upon World War I in that, whether he likes it or not. Even if he totally was right, he didn't mean to have it. Readers were pulling that out. But I'd go one further. I'd say his subconscious mind was putting it in. He's famously quoted by saying that the scene of the dead elves under the water was very much taken from his own experience in the trenches, seeing corpses beneath the mud. Okay, my point is made. I don't have to beat this up. But keep in mind that you put all this information in a book, all these little words, all these descriptions, all these scenes, the whole thing, and you offer it to a reader. A reader is a human being with a mind, with a brain, and the mind is a meaning-making machine. This is what it does. We try to find patterns. We try to find cause and effect. We like justice. We like neatness. That's one of the great things we like about books. Not always get it, but that there's a nice, neat little nugget of truth in here with a beginning, middle, and an end, and some kind of satisfaction at the end of it. This is what we strive for. Even if we don't get it, okay, fine. You know, we have a bad ending or we have Deus Ex Machina that pisses us off. But during the whole process of that, the mind is making patterns. The mind is recognizing patterns, perhaps seeing them where you didn't intend them. But if you get enough of them, they will reinforce the mind's ideas of what they're seeing. This is theme. The mind will see these patterns, will make connections subconsciously or consciously if you're a critic and you go and you spend 7 years of your life in higher education learning to talk this way. But even if you didn't, the theme still comes through subconsciously. And my argument here is that the writer puts the clues in subconsciously too. They can put them in consciously if they like, which is good. But subconsciously, they'll always be there because as we are meaning-making machines, we are pattern recognition machines, and we are meaning-expressing machines. Okay, so what I'm saying is that it's all there. Now, I'm hopeful, you're probably going, Johnny, you're beating this point up. I don't care. It's my presentation. Coke here. Thanks for staying with me. Okay. What is theme again? Let's look at theme again. We can look at theme and say, it's what it's all about, right? Theme is the subject of a piece of writing. If you look at it, you read all of it. I like to think of it as the bass note, for one thing. Now, I don't want you to start thinking of theme as morals yet, because that's not it. But it's a unification of ideas, and it can be on several levels, and it can play multiple themes at once. But an ultimate bass theme, the bass note, is what I consider theme to be. Since in our spare times, I'm sure we all make perfume in our garage because bass note is the longest lasting element of a fragrance. Yeah, we can all wrap our minds around that, right? Well, I really can't because I've never made perfume and my natural musk is all I really need. But I think of bass also musically. When I was growing up, I was a Beatles fan. I'm still a Beatles fan. And you know, I love the music. And when I was young and didn't know better, I was wondering what the hell Paul McCartney was doing up there. Mr. Left-handed playing away on the bass. I didn't get it. The bass is, you like the electric, you want the lead guitar, the vocals, that you can hear the drum going, you got George Harrison plucking on that Indian thing. Oh, that's very cool. What the hell's that bass doing there? And then one day, I had an epiphany. I heard music that I really loved with the bass taken out. And it was unrecognizable. It had always been there, but I'd never paid attention to it. And that is kind of what theme is. I would say that the bass note in music is more important than the rhythm of the drum. Because the bass, it's almost a subconscious, almost a subdermal feeling. You feel those vibrations. If you ever go to a concert, I was at the Oz concert. I can't skunk out here. You can feel the damn bass coming through you, coming through the floor. And you don't necessarily notice it because that's not what's in front of you. But take it out and the structure falls apart. And that is kind of what theme is. And you will have a theme in your book, whether you like it or not, because the reader will sense it. The reader will look for it. The reader will strive for it. Okay, so anyway, what's the big idea? Questions under investigation. Most theme tends to come up to the idea of the human condition. This is a very important generality because people are the most narcissistic animals ever. That's why we read books. It's why we have characters, why we have main characters. They are avatars for us to experience new life. We are interested in what people do. We are interested in the human condition because we are interested in us. There's a reason why we slow down in car crashes. We want to see what's going on. We don't want to have to make that same mistake. So we look at how dumbass there crashed into the tree. We won't do that. We've learned, all right, fine. But we want to know these things. Even train wrecks or something, we want to know the human condition because we like the big ideas. We might not agree with it, but we're interested, even at a subconscious or spiritual level. We're interested in it. So again, I'm going to start talking about getting into a conscious theme a bit, and in which case we have an idea that is being tested. I'm not talking a moral lesson like don't eat yellow snow or insert horrible political joke here. There are ways, we're not doing that. Sometimes you can more. Let's go back to this diagram real quick. The writer and the reader, notice how they meet in the middle, but I want to just imagine for a second. The writer pushed all the way to the reader where the reader only has to go like a centimeter out to meet the writer. What would that work look like? I would say that particular work where the writer is taking away all the expectations of the reader for interpretation might fall into technical manuals, bullet points. No, you don't want a lot of fuzzy interpretation on that. Bad fiction with a lot of adverbs and adjectives that don't let the reader fill it in themselves. Or children's books, because children don't have all of the necessary things to do yet, or don't have all the necessary connections. So you'll have the fluffy bunny happily jumped into the hole, and they don't need to really think about the hole having some kind of Freudian connection. They don't need to. Now, what about the other direction, where the writer only goes this far and expects the reader to go all the way? First of all, you're taking a hell of a chance, because that's a lot of work for a reader, and a lot of readers won't go there. However, those that do are usually moved by it. They are so involved in the program. I mean, what is it? They can't think of the word. They're involved in it. They are part of the program. They're part of the story. They're soaked that they're committed. Now, what would that be where you really want the reader to come a long way? I would argue like poetry, where every word must be savored, where you will notice the line breaks like you'd never notice it before. Commas. What the hell is that comma doing? Now I got to think about that. And this will move me, and this will have a greater effect on me because I am more invested. Now, theme often goes that way. And the more effort you put into a book, but the more effort you put into understanding something, you become a part of the process, and it tends to have a much greater impact on you as the reader. Okay, that being said, so the big idea, it's not a lesson or a moral, even though young adults, you could possibly do that. Have, don't eat yellow snow. Not all dogs are nice. That's fine. Morals, you can do that. It could be, not necessarily going to call it a theme, but I'll call it a moral. It could be a lesson, because themes, and sometimes, tonight, and often there's residual ideas planted. We'll get to that. All right. I ran into this at a writing conference in Henderson, Nevada. Ever had this? Every word, sentence, paragraph, and chapter in your book must speak to either plot or character. All right. Some people said, well, setting. All right, fine. We'll throw setting in there, but I'm not going to change the slide right now because I'm lazy. But I will argue that there is theme. I will call it a third level. Setting possibly is plot and character, but theme as well. And theme is important. Theme is absolutely a legitimate thing to concentrate on. Those of you who've read Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath will notice they have these intermittent chapters that have nothing to do with the Jodes family or their path from Oklahoma to California. They just suddenly pop up out of nowhere, and the whole book can be, and you can take that whole chapter, throw it out, and not lose a thing. But why are they there? Because he had a shitty editor who didn't know to take that out? No, because those are thematic pieces. Those are, you could call it setting a scene, but they're not. They're thematic pieces. You're getting through the greater ideas by taking another look at it. You're looking at it, the single plot is the Jode family moving, and yet we'll take a look over here to get this perspective and that perspective. The same kind of thing was done recently by Neil Gaiman in American Gods. Perhaps you've read this one. That's more recent. And he has chapters in it, and chapters where he breaks from the main storyline, and he'll talk about how one god or another god managed to come to America. They're great little short stories in themselves, but you wonder, why were they part of the book? Okay, Neil Gaiman, like Steinbeck, can do whatever the hell they want. They're that big, but of course they can, because also they're great writers, and those are thematic pieces. And you can just have a moment in your book that all it does is helping you explore theme. You can have entire subplots that do the very thing. As a matter of fact, that's it. Now, we'll break right now. I don't not break right now, but I will say themes are optional. This is absolutely inside baseball. You do not need to do this. This writing to theme is, I would consider, the most advanced technique of writing I know, as far as story creation, story production. Because you don't need it. Sometimes you really trip over it, you get in your way. And not every story has a theme. It really is a luxury thing. They do have a theme, you will get it, but usually the themes are just so trite, so cliched that we just absorb them. Right? Good triumphs over evil, believe in yourself, those kind of themes, sure, those kind of there. They're not really exploring big questions in the same idea, but they still have a familiar story arc that originally was originally patterned after a major theme of the hero. Now it's just trite and cackneyed, and I'm saying these in the worst possible way, but now they're familiar. Okay. Think of a lot of the superhero movies, they really don't have a theme. They're mental margaritas. That's what I call them. Some comedies are mental margaritas. They don't have it. Sometimes they have themes. Sometimes they have an idea of, like Liar Liar, which is a hilarious comedy. Had with Jim Carrey, had the idea of lying and truthfulness and what that means to a person. There was actually a theme underneath there. It was pretty good. The idea was basically lying. You got comedy gold out of that. You don't always have to have it. You don't necessarily have to think about it, but it's a good thing to have. Even if you just jot it down somewhere. I'll get to that. All right. You can have both. You can have thematic elements and be entertaining at the same time. That is important because that's what we do. Okay. The importance themes, it's an elegant design. It holds everything together, even if it doesn't seem like it does. You wonder why the book continues to work, why this other chapter comes in. Because if you know your theme, you have absolutely a backbone to hang the rest of your muscles on. Okay, it's an elegant design, and it's like the magic eye. You remember these things, these 3D things. You got to cross your eyes. They were really big in the day. Now you can buy books for them anyway. I think optometrists publish these to get business. But you look at these, and after you finally see the design, you'll never not see it. That's kind of what a theme does as well, I think. It's a challenge. It's a puzzle if you want to do that, and I think it's. If you have a theme and you kind of know what you're writing about on the kind of meta spiritual deep level, I think you have the opportunity of writing a much more satisfying work, a much more pleasing work. Because like I say, we like patterns. We like things to make sense. We are afraid of a universe in chaos. I asked myself, is God a pantser or a plotter? This was a huge question. I wrestled with this for like half a year because I had a death in the family. What the hell? This made no sense. I just thought the foreshadowing was for shit. The climax was lame. There was no theme to it. There was nothing. It really bothered me. And I think that's natural because people we are meaning making. We want to find meaning. We want to find connections. We want that foreshadowing to pay off, and we want this to be foreshadowed before. That's part of what theme does, is it allows a central idea to develop, and you can follow the progress of it, sense where it might go. Even if it doesn't, you can sense all those other things. But we want to think there is a reason. So yes, this is plotting. We want to think there's a plot. Okay. Also, writing is therapy. If you have a problem and you're working with it, if you're writing I've been trying to write another comedy this year, but my mood has been so crap because of the pandemic. I'm just beside myself. I finally put it aside because I just what kept coming up in my writing was not the comedy. Sometimes it comes out really well, but this time it wasn't. I could sense another book coming because there was something eating at me. Because writing is a reflection of the author. We don't like to say that. We like to think there's a difference between the writer and the art, from the art to the artist. There is and there isn't. But when you're creating it, if you're having real problems with your children or your finances, those kind of pressures will show up in your book. And you later will be able to read, oh God, yeah, I see this. I wrote an entire book, hopefully a series, about daddy issues. And I knew going in, I'm just going to work on my daddy issues. I'm going to write my dad and have a young character try to find this guy. try to corner him and say, what the hell is going on, Dad? And of course, he's dead. She has to come to other terms with it. But I knew it was a daddy issue book because I was having daddy issues. So I wrote it, and it helped me. All right. So writing serves a purpose, even if it's never read. Think of a journal. I love this line. I can shake off everything as I write. My sorrows disappear. My courage is reborn. Anne Frank. She had no audience for that. Writing is its own purpose. Writing was its own creation. Writing was its own therapy. She used the writing for that. And that alone is it. So when you're writing fiction, or if you're writing journals or whatever, laundry lists, you can use that creative energy your muse is giving you to work these problems out. If you can do it more structured, you can get more story out of it. You can follow it to its different pieces. Graham Greene. Writing is a form of therapy. I sometimes wonder how all those who do not write, compose, or paint can manage to escape the madness, melancholy, panic, and fear which is inherent in the human situation. Wow. And theme can turn writing craft into literature. Is there a better reason than this? So yes, that's it. That's very, very powerful. And there's the first half of the lecture where we discuss, among other things, why theme is so important and why it's always going to be there. So what I'm saying is that even if you don't intend to write anything, and I say it is optional very much to think about it beforehand. If it's well written and there's a theme in there, critics will find it. There's a reason why certain books are elevated above other books, because the themes resonated. In other words, it's another facet of the book. You have great action, great character, but you also have a great theme. 3 for 3 is better than 2 out of 3. And so this book will be a little bit better. So if you can consciously go in knowing what it is. Also, you might not know what your theme is yourself until you start writing it. Maybe you come back and you read it and you see what you've actually made. I've done that. I was one of my earliest books before I actually formalized this process. I got like 50,000 words into it, and I had to find it. And that's when I realized what the hell I was writing and what it was about and how autobiographical it was. And that was The Finger Trap. On sale now. Winner of a major award in my life. Go get it. Okay, anyway. So, all right. So how do we do this? All right. So identifying theme. All right. So here's what I was talking about. Pantser versus plotter. Okay, first of all, nobody is always a pantser. Nobody is always a plotter. If you don't know what I mean by pantser, you're new here, and I respect you for coming anyway. A pantser means writing by the seat of your pants, which means you just wait. You sit at the keyboard, or you get your happy pencil. I got a pencil. See my pencil? You get a happy pencil, and you wait for the muse to visit, and then you scribble it down, and hallelujah, you get some great stuff. And a lot of great work has been done that way. A plotter is somebody, of course, the most extreme is they've outlined everything. And they have come up with, moment by moment scenes, and they have scenes and chapters all out there, and they have an outline of how to proceed. That's a plotter. Now, most people are somewhere in between. I'm one of those. Don't get me wrong, pantsers can have great books. There are a lot of famous pantsers in the world. Stephen King is a famous pantser, but God help us. He starts with a creepy clown and he ends with a spooky space spider and makes a mess of it in the end. But it starts out really well. I think George Martin is a pantser, and there's a reason why his books aren't done yet. Okay, so anyway, but when you're pre-writing, and you're thinking of your character, your plot, your setting, your subplots, the secret power of the sword, give a thought to a theme. Give a thought, a word, a phrase, a concept. All right, like here's three of my books where I did this. Okay, so Love, the Darker Side of Beatrice Hill. That was my debut. And Beatrice Hill, I thought, was a damn love story. In my life at the time, I was living in Oregon, and all of our friends were divorcing. It was ugly as hell. It was strange. We had very few friends. We're not from Oregon originally, but we were up there, and we had a nice group of friends. And then that couple over there got in trouble, and they started nitpicking at each other and fighting. And then it spread to this couple, and then it spread to this couple, and then they wanted us to get involved, and it spread to that couple, and my sister and my brother-in-law. And finally, Michelle and I just grabbed each other. Michelle's my wife. Good to know that. We ran into the basement, and we hid for 8 months. And when we came out, it was scorched earth. We had no friends. Nobody would talk to us because we didn't take sides. They were all divorced, 4 or 5 broken families, whereas the year before, they were the closest, most loving people we knew. And that bothered me. I had to work through how that love, what's the dark side of love, that jealousy, that hatred. So I started writing a love story about that. And it turned out writing a horror about a demon of love called Beatrice. And it's a damn great book, on sale now. Good and Evil and What a Mortal Hand is another good example, another horror I wrote. I knew I was getting horror in this one, where I just couldn't manage to focus. It was shortly after his God a Pantser or Plotter. And one of the ways I got through that concept is I was trying to come to terms with good and evil and the lack thereof. There are more things in heaven and earth than dream of your philosophy, or nothing is good or evil, but that thinking makes it so, those lines, right? And I came down to a different philosophy. Instead of a good and evil, I borrowed into the Hindu philosophies of a trinity of gods. That helped. And then I got Kali, and this whole thing fell apart. The whole thing fell into place. I mean, fantastic book, What a Mortal Hand. Get it. And and Eleanor, I wrote this down for this one. I wrote good and evil. I actually had pages and pages of brainstorming of theme on this. And Eleanor, I knew I needed to have I wanted trust, survival, and change, and being powerful but not being able to use it. All these ideas were from the start. And by just having it written down before I started, it became part of the story. It was always in my subconscious. And everything I wrote followed those ideas, followed the stream of that theme. Now, I know that sounds strange, but consider, if you will, there's a Gaelic philosophy that says that thinking something gives it a level of reality. Saying it brings the level of reality up. Writing it makes it real. So if you write it down, if you're just listening to this to this class now, you'll have some recollection, it'll do some good. If you tell other people about it, the reinforcement will be there later. If you write it, it'll be the strongest ever you could do. This is why you take notes in class, even if you can't read your notes later. That's me. But you still have written it down and you've processed it. So you process this early on in your book and in your thinking, and you know what it is. And that stays in your mind because you've written it down and you've explored it. It stays in the same way. If you're a world builder, you know your world inside and out, you'll first of all have to fight the urge to put it all on the page, but you can't, right? But it'll run well because you know what happens. You know why it works this way. And that truth that you know will shine through. The same way that Tolkien didn't have to give the whole Silmarillion in The Lord of the Rings is the same way the themes fall through. It's just there because the truth of it is there in your own mind. Okay. Think about this. The other thing to think about themes, I always compare it to a lighthouse. Those of you who sail, I know, Colorado, we're landlocked. All right. Think of it as a lighthouse, though. And you do not sail toward a lighthouse unless you're in Area X, and then, my God, you're in trouble. But no, you use the lighthouse to navigate by, not to sail to. You always keep it on the side. It helps you get going. It gives you ideas and helps you get details that you didn't know to include. For example, in Beatrice, I knew it was about love, but I wanted to look at other kinds of love. So I just started thinking about what other kinds of love there would be. There would be male and man and wife, lovers. There would be filial love between siblings. There would be, father and son, sibling love, friend love, love of self. All these different love angles I wanted to explore, and they gave birth to characters and situations. Anyway, so that's how I got ideas on what to include. So when you're outlining, you're coming up with scene ideas. Theme is your friend. It's also, think of it as background illumination. It's always there, even if you don't. It's that bass note. Since it's in the back of your mind and you're always looking toward this general idea of a better way. My themes of kings, queens, and colonies are vast, political and social and spiritual themes, and I always had them in mind. I knew where I was going and what was at stake. Excuse me, and it always had that bass note. Anyway, and because it's there and you got there by logic of your theme, the reader will sense the truth of that, because the reader will give you the benefit of the doubt, and they will believe that everything's there for a reason, and they will take the pieces you give them and form them into a unit, and they'll come to some idea. Maybe same idea as you, maybe not, but at least it'll make them think. So how do we do this in practice? Well, all right, let's do this. Look at your own life and what questions and concerns or challenges are you facing? Family, faith, society. Oh, there's one, society. Okay. You see, I think there's a reason why we had so many dystopian books all at once. There's a zeitgeist, you know. Elizabeth Gilbert talks about multiple discovery. And there might be something to that if you believe any kind of the spiritual idea of thought or race or cultural consciousness. There's a lot to that. But nevertheless, what's bothering you? What when you start writing, what's going to come through anyway? What's bothering you? What questions do you have? Granted, you want to write that great story about the happy elf that takes the uppers and does that unspeakable thing with the chair. But you want that's a terrible example. Don't write that story. But you'll have a story in mind and think about what you can do with it. But here's one, for example. Starting with theme. Do I own things or do they own me? This was a question that came up while we were trying to sell our house. A few years ago, we tried to sell our house. Our kids left. My wife and I were empty nesters for the first time. We're thinking how we're going to define ourselves, not as parents. So we put our house on the market, started building a condo, and it was hell. First of all, you have to sell a house, you have to get out of the house, basically. You have to pull down everything that makes it homey. You have to take down all pictures of you and your family. You got to keep it clean constantly. You got to make it look big by taking all your stuff out and putting it in a storage unit. And you got to keep it clean 24/7. And the strain of it was nightmarish. So we were really under a strain on this. Long story short, the kids moved back. We didn't sell, thank God. Anyway, but the idea here was materialism and happiness, because this was the idea I was having. Do I own things or do they own me? That's a solid theme to wrestle with. Take it, do wonders with it, because there's no new themes, there's no new stories. You can run with it. But this is what we're going to follow. And I was thinking about this, and this is going to be my example. But in your example, take a look at it. What can you frame a problem in these terms? And then what we're going to do. Okay, I think we're okay. We are going to take the facets. We're going to look at some of the main facets of a story and find ways to link them up thematically beforehand. We're going to do a little planning here. We're going to look at our plots, our characters, our settings, our style of writing, even other things, and find ways to unite them all. Because theme isn't everything. If we go in a little bit, if we think about it, the story can go anywhere. For example, my story, The Finger Trap, is a mystery. A funny comedy mystery that takes place in Salt Lake City. Great book. But the idea of coming to terms with what you want to be, a midlife crisis, a coming of age story mixed with a midlife crisis at the same time, was very much what I was going through in my life at that moment. So as I'm expressing this character, it's very autobiographical. And I could, you have to see it, but it's underneath, and it doesn't get in the way. But as the main story unfolds, the character develops in that way. Theme is very often told most directly by character arc and not plot arc. Okay, all right. First, let's look at conflicts, thematic conflicts. Now, a conflict is a crucible. I don't mean you burn witches there. You can't, but it's the main conflict. It's a crucible is actually the idea is where you burn something to make it pure and get to the truth of it, right? So the heart of the question would be the thematic conflict, the crucible, subplots, and the corollaries of the plots. Oh, okay. For example, do I own things or do they own me? Materialism and happiness. So here's our theme we're playing with, right? So my life, since I have some of this, would be selling a house, life on hold while it sells, and family stressed. Very much our happiness is being mortgaged to try to get out of this house, right? Okay, that's my experience, but I could very much write this as fictional characters and have them do something else. Here's some other themes, some of the main conflicts we can use. A rich person is in love with a poor person. Okay, poor person is in deep debt. Do they get a prenup? These are scenes and situations and subplots which very much can be explored and used. Family pressure. There's a rich suitor in the wings. How does that work out, right? Materialism, happiness. I don't know. To be honest, you got to say that they're both important. I love this. Carrying gold and money through the wilderness is a burden of survival. I love that. So there's a great Twilight Zone episode where these men rob all this gold, and then they put themselves in suspended animation to get out from the crime. And then 100 years later, they have all the gold and they're going to go get rich, and they're walking out of the desert, but things go wrong, and they're carrying the gold, and they're starving, and they're dying of thirst, and then one by one they die. Spoilers. And then a space couple comes in a car borrowed from Forbidden Planet. Don't know how it got here. And they said, oh, well, look at these poor sons of bitches. Oh, and look, they're carrying this gold. Why would they think that's important? We can make that with our synthesizer in 10 seconds. Oh, twist. But it's interesting. They lost their life for the gold. Okay. So you've all seen the Freytag pyramid, but how does it function with theme? Good question. You're a smart person. First of all, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. The setup, everything happens in Act 2, and then the final. And I would say that the first act, you ask the question. Those of you who are familiar with that god-awful book by Snyder, Save the Cat, mentions that on minute number 5 of your screenplay, God help us, you state the theme. All right. I'm not a big believer in actually having such formulaic writing, but the idea of suggesting the question and opening it up and doing thematic is very important. You don't want to wait necessarily. You do want to get it out there. You want to ask the question, do I own things? Do they own me? What is the idea? We're going to talk about the themes are going to be around. It doesn't have to be that question. It can be materialism as a whole, happiness and materialism, however you want to frame it. You don't have to say those words, but they are kind of in the first 10%. Act 1. Act 2 is all your exploration. And Act 3, you answer the question. Or you don't. That's okay too. If you've done a good job in Act 2, the reader will follow along with it, and all's well. They'll get it. And sometimes the question is answered improperly. The characters make a mistake. You, as a writer, might have made the mistake and come to the wrong conclusion. And that's really fun to do when your readers call you on that, because you know you've lied to yourself, because your subconscious was writing the book in a certain way. All right, but that can happen too. But that's just it. Think about this the same way as the Freytag pyramid. Okay, thematic arcs. Okay, theme is usually the most defined and explored with a character arc, right? Rather than the story arc. Do I own things or do they own me? Material is happiness, right? Protagonist has to choose to keep a thing or a person. That was the love of my life, right? And what about the fear of loss, the rags to riches or the riches to rags story, right? Those people love those stories. And rags to riches, riches to rags, usually, happy endings, but these very basic questions, very, very familiar character arcs can be explored by you, and honestly looking at the questions and asking yourself these questions and exploring them. Usually it's, oh, it sucks to be poor. When I get rich, I won't forget. Then you can explore how that doesn't happen. There's not a new story to be told. There's only your way of telling it. And this is playing here as well. Thematic characters. Think about what forces are at work. This is Matthew McConaughey and Jodie Foster from the movie Contact. If you haven't seen that movie, it's pretty good. It's a science fiction, believe it or not, way back in the day. And it's about mankind getting contact with an alien species. At the time, I really loved this movie because I had a crush on Jodie Foster. And I couldn't imagine how Matthew McConaughey ever became a leading man. I still can't. And I hated his character. His character was religion. He was a preacher in the story, and Jodie Foster was a scientist. And they fought, they argued. They were thematic characters. At the end, they kissed. Yay. But basically, they each came up with they basically were the crucible that the idea of religion versus science and progress and everything met. And watching the movie again as an adult, Matthew McConaughey's character was honest and, surprisingly, maybe in my older eyes, more persuasive than he was when I first watched it. And that's an interesting thing. Anyway, so think about it. If you can personify the forces, love, expedience, passivity, test of themes, this is how you do it. Try to take a character and use them as playing pieces to test your theme. All right. So as an example, do I own things or do they? Here we are again. What characters could be interesting in this particular theme story? A collector would be a great character. Materialism, very much on display. How does that character react? How does that character compare to a hoarder, which is doing basically the same thing, just differently? right? Those two characters could be in contrast. A hippie living simply or a homeless person. Basically the same people, just different kind of angles. And those would be good characters to help explore the idea of materialism and happiness. The hippie throws off materialism and finds happiness. The homeless person wishes to God he could get a pair of shoes. There's a difference, and that is actually very fertile ground in order to work. Thematic setting. Um, Setting again. Setting is a lot of people ignore setting, don't give it enough thought, in my opinion. But you can have try to give some thought. I mean, when you're thinking of where to place a scene, there's Seinfeld. Everything happened in that damn coffee shop or his house. Fine, but you can do better than that. Of course, there's the overall setting of your piece. Where does it take place in the future or the past? In my piece of Kings, Queens, and Colonies coming in 2021 from Flame Tree Press, I chose science fiction. It takes place in the future, about a few thousand years from now. However, it is actually a telling of the lost colony of Roanoke from the 16th century. I set it up in the future because I didn't like the ending of that particular story, and I'm lazy and didn't want to do all the research. However, I mirrored it toward there so I could actually have more. I actually had more freedom in that. That was very, very important to me, is to bring some of the pieces I wanted to. Now that was construction, but to keep my themes, because the way the story ended originally didn't have my theme. The way I ended it did. Okay, so anyway. But think about it as more than just a background space. Think about a setting is very much a background, a base note, very much a background piece. So it's very good for theme. So think about time, places, realities, and descriptions, particularly descriptions of where you can drop in thematic pressures, if you will. You describe something that you're dealing with life and death, and you describe a graveyard as a very happy place, or a nursery in horrific terms. Those have, just using some different colored words, those go a long way. In ours, okay, here we are again. We're looking at settings. Do I want things, marital happiness? What good settings could be good for a backdrop of this theme? All right. America versus India. That would be interesting. India is much more impoverished than America, and there's wealth there as well, and then back and forth. But on the whole, those would be good counterweights. How about an auction? So, seeing characters meet at an auction, maybe the hoarder and the collector meet at an auction. That makes a lot of sense. Or the wilderness, where the more you carry, the slower you go, right? That would be a good setting for material for this theme. Any one of those things could play into it. Now, maybe not the main thing. Maybe not I don't have to put the whole story at an auction, but I could have one scene there, right? Okay. Symbols. Symbols are tricky. Symbols are how we link everything together. And since every single word, letter, syllable, sound is a damn symbol, it's basically just an idea of it. But if you can find a representational object that helps carry your theme along, that goes a long way to it. I like to think of the best way I get is to just start, when you have your theme, just write down things that remind you of those things. You can find it. Sometimes you find an established symbol. Faith, hope, and charity. You find sunset for the death, happiness as a sunset, the remains of the day. That story ends on a sunset, the remains of the day, very symbolic there. In the Hunger Games, the Jabberjay, the Mockingjay, I'm sorry, the Mockingjay is a very powerful created symbol because it took the Jabberjay and everything. It basically turns into a symbol of resistance formed by the government's mistreatment and arrogance. So they basically usurped their symbols. They morphed and became theirs. It's more complicated than giving it time for, but I have a whole class on symbols anyway. That'd be one. But there are ways to do it. Try to find pieces that look very much like that. In our example, all right. Heavy Gold. I love this story. I remember back in the day, it used to be like Friday night television movie made for television movies. Now we call that Netflix, but back in the day, they were a big deal. And I remember there was one show that stayed with me, and it was about these four friends who were out hiking or camping, and they saw a plane crash, and they go up to the plane, and they find it's full of money. Crashed. It was drug people, right? And they just have all this piles of money. So I think it was money. Yeah, it was money. So they grab all this money, and then they and then hilarity ensues. They basically start killing each other. They hate each other. They're greedy. All the worst traits come out of them, and then they finally separate. And after some of them, and one of the characters I remember very distinctly chose to go this way over the mountain pass, and he's climbing over the mountain pass, and a blizzard hits, as they do, and he's huddled underneath his cloak or coat or his tent or something, and he's there freezing to death, and he pulls out some of the money and he puts it on the ground, and he's lighting the money so he can warm his hands and live. And then he looks at it, and then he pats it out because he didn't want to lose the money. See, he freezes to death, an old Jack Nicholson moment. The guy that dropped the money and escaped and left it alone survived. Same thing with heavy gold, the story I told you about before with the gold in that story from the Twilight Zone. And the white elephant, which is a great symbol. If you don't know the story of the white elephant, back in India, so legend goes, when you pissed off the king, he would give you a present. He would give you a white elephant. Elephants were prized. White elephants were holy and prized. And an elephant ate a lot. So he gave you a white elephant. You couldn't get rid of it because it's an insult given to you from the king. You couldn't kill it because it's holy. And it would eat you out of house and home. It was basically too expensive to own. Somebody once gifted me a Mercedes-Benz, and at the first $300 oil change, I sold the son of a bitch. Yes, too expensive to own. All right. Then there are literary symbols, which is its own kind of symbol, right? Ultimately, you can say, by the way, all themes are about art, love, or death. In a pickle, choose one of those three, and you've got a 33% chance you'll get one of them. Ultimately, most themes can be boiled down to one of those three. Anyway, but good literary symbols can go a long way to referencing your book, because as symbols and theme connect one to another in a chain of meaning. So when you call something a white whale, for example, you are paying homage, and you are bringing in this all that luggage, all that meaning from that book into your story, which is very useful. You can pay homage to the past. It also makes you look really cool because it shows that you're entering a conversation of authors that started with cave paintings. And really, who doesn't want to do that? In our story, all right, what do we have? The Parable of the Stradivarius violin. Imagine security. That story, I think, is an O. Henry story. I don't know, but family was dying. Poor family living in the slums. And they always said, well, if anything gets too bad, we can sell great grandpa Stradivarius. He has Stradivarius. That's an expensive violin. And, things are bad, but don't worry. If things get too bad, we'll sell the Stradivarius. So one day things are so bad, the father grabs the Stradivarius without anyone knowing, and he takes it to the pawn shop, and he puts the Stradivarius and says, I got to sell this. It's worth things. It's been the family for years, but we're in trouble. We got to sell it. And the pawn shop owner looks at it and says, I remember this violin. Your father brought it to me as well. It's a fake. It's not worth a dime. And yet the father had told this dad the same story. Said, yeah, it's worthless. So the father takes the violin back and puts it back on the shelf, and they don't have enough to eat. And what's going on? He says, don't worry. These are tough times, and we'll get through them. If things ever get really bad, don't worry. We can always fall back on the Stradivarius. And thus they became a symbol of security. That's a great symbol we can use for materialism and happiness. False one. Gollum in the Ring, the obsession there. This plays into materialism and happiness. We can make some reference to Gollum and get all the geeks on board. The movie Say Anything is really good, The Rich and the Poor. If you haven't seen the movie Best Offer, about a collector with the guy that played Barbossa in Pirates of the Caribbean. It'll come to me. I want to say Irons, but that's not it. Anyway, great movie, The Collector. Highly recommend it. Okay. So, summing it up, because believe it or not, we're summing it up. Once the pieces are set, let them go and follow them. This is like ideas, and just see where they take you. If you're working from a theme, even on a subtle level, it'll go there. If you're conscious of what your theme is, if early in your construction of your book you wrote it down, it'll be there. But later, as you're writing, you'll go read it again, and you get new ideas, and it'll help you go on. The subconscious, working through an idea, will manifest these ideas on the page. Your troubles, your worries, your prejudices, your bigotry, all this stuff can show up because you are a human animal expressing yourself. Some of those things got to be pulled back and you got to watch yourself. But still, as you're working through these personal problems, which are also human problems, allow them to express and work through them. And you can find a lot. Sometimes it just writes itself. When you're working with a theme, I recommend do not build straw men. Try not to. Do not build straw men. Try to have the villain like McConaughey. Know what they're talking about. Be eloquent. Be passionate. Remember that the villain thinks he's the hero of his own story. Make him believable. He's often more interested than anything. And test your character. Test it all. And use it as a lighthouse. And eventually you just put your characters in a room. You'll take dictation because they'll be formed enough and the themes will just come. So as you're pre-writing your story, consider character, setting, plot, theme, and think of these issues that we've just gone through. Because the best advice an editor ever gave me early in my career was told me to make sure that my book was about something. Now when people ask me what my books are about, I don't tell them it's about a young girl growing up in Wyoming, a monster. I just say, hey, so what has changed? And what happens if you could change? And it's like a different theme, or it's not about the thugs killing people in the deserts of Nevada. No, I'm dealing with good and evil and the power of destruction for the power of good. So I got to ratchet that out. Do not sell books that way. This is a problem I have, but this is where I think you can see this. All right, so that's about it. I would ask you now to go to johnnyworthen.com and join my mailing list. It's on the top, and you get a copy of the knick-knack. Woo! That's on my homepage. Do it. Do it now. Anyway, I'm giving away a free book. You can join my mailing list, get the book, drop out of the mailing list later. That's fine. All my books are surprisingly different. You wonder if the same person wrote them, again, because I'm looking at different problems. The knick-knack case and all my Tony Flanners tend to be lighter, but they all are also very much kept within a theme. And I think you'll like the knick-knack case. On my events page, you can see the classes I'm teaching and where I'm going to present. My mailing list is very seldomly used, so that's not always a good thing to keep track of me. But my home pages, my events pages as well. So I hope if you enjoyed this, you can come to this. Also, if you're quick, you can email me and I'll give you a copy of these slides, okay? A PDF copy of these slides, because I know I did kind of go through fast, even though you probably have access to this video for a while. If you want to copy the slides, or if you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm Johnny at johnnyworthen.com. Every single page has a link to my email, and that's kind of it. This is it. This is my class. And yeah, I can talk this long, this long. All right, so how do I get out of here? All right, that's how I get out of here, and stop share. Okay, I'm still recording. I'm still here. My hair is still shitty. Okay, anyway, I appreciate you sticking with me. Again, if you have any questions, contact Johnny at johnnyworthen.com. I love doing this. This is what I do. I love the art. I'm always exploring this anyway. I hope you read my books. I hope you're fans. I hope you have a good experience writing. Use writing for all it can do, all your creativity, all your hangups. All the questions you have can be answered. Open the door up and see where your subconscious takes you. It's a good time. Anyway, again, I appreciate the time. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.